Let's go to Judea again. Jesus wants to go back. Seriously? The disciples can hardly believe what they are hearing. Back across the Jordan. Back toward the danger. Rabbi, we were just there, remember? The Judeans were the ones who were just trying to stone you. The disciples still have fresh images of the crowds with blood in their eyes. In Jerusalem at the festival celebrating the rededication of the temple, Jesus had been attracting attention again, speaking too openly about his works and about how he and God were one. Once again, the people started picking up stones, circling around, closing in. Again, the tension, the adrenaline, the emotions were charging through the disciples, and with furtive glances, they were looking around for an escape route. Yes, they had escaped again. Here they were in Bethany, but not easily, not automatically. This isn't just scripted, you know. There are no guarantees. It could have all ended right there in a rain of stones and pain. And now he wants to go back across the river into Judea toward Bethany. We all have places we'd rather not go back to. Some of them are literal places, hometowns where we were excluded and mocked as a teenager, or impoverished neighborhoods near our homes where we felt unsafe. Some of the places we would rather not go back to are harder to find on a map. The old pain of a broken relationship, the thorny topic in our marriage that never seems to get resolved, no matter how many times it comes around again. The death of a loved one that came too soon, that left us, like Martha and Mary, saying, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." The church has those places too, of course. Congregations do have places they don't want to go back to. The ones on the maps are often valleys where the church has been asked to prophesy in the past, but now remembers the cost. Places like segregated public schools and HIV clinics. Places like Haiti and a reservation in South Dakota. And then there are those places in the desert where the dry bones of soldiers and illegal immigrants lay unattended. The places not on any maps are just as real. The social issue that split the parish and the diocese a few years ago, or the despairing reports about declining membership. I'm certain that we can all think of our own dreaded places. I'm sure you can think of other places that you'd rather not revisit, or that we shy away from here in this congregation. We just don't want to go there again. And with good reason. The disciples weren't reluctant just because they were burned out and cynical, although they may have been those things too. They were reluctant, at least in part, because they knew whereof they spoke. They had seen that frightened edge of insanity, frenzied look in the eyes of a rock-wielding crowd. So that the risk wasn't just imaginary. To go back was to choose a known path of danger, to go against one's own instinct to leave well enough alone. But Jesus is going. In spite of the narrow escape, in spite of the warnings of his friends, in spite of the fact that Lazarus, his friend, was already dead, Jesus is going. Lazarus is dead, he says, but let us go to him. To him? To a dead guy? So you want us to go on a suicide mission to see a dead guy? Perhaps some of the disciples thought that maybe the people back in Judea, maybe they were right, that Jesus might be possessed or nearly out of his mind. Thomas, for all his doubting later on, is the one who tries to rally the team. Let's go with him, he says, that we may die with him. Now, to some minds, a statement like, let's go die with him, might not qualify Thomas as a brilliant motivational speaker. But at least we know that Thomas, we have to give him points for loyalty and valor. He's willing to go, and all the disciples end up going with him because they are loyal to Jesus and because they're trying their best to trust him. And I think this is really trying him this time. But Thomas's rallying cry, for all his loyalty and bravado, misses the point. The words make it sound almost like dying is the purpose of the trip, the purpose of going back. But Jesus isn't going to Bethany to die. Yes, the risks are real, as they all know, and they really could all end up dead. But that's not the point. That's not why Jesus is going. He's going for the sake of healing. Going for the sake of healing both the living and the dead. He's going because he loves Lazarus and Martha and Mary. And so he's going back into danger for them and for the same work of healing that he has always done. The disciples look toward Bethany, and all they see is death. But Jesus, who is the Lord of both the living and the dead, sees his friends and all the wonderful opportunities and possibilities. He is going, despite all the risks, to open a grave. As you and I prepare to enter the season of Passiontide, as we prepare to walk once again through the story of Christ's suffering, this passage asks us to discern, among other things, whether there are places to which we are called back. It asks us to consider returning in spite of what experience has taught us, to those places where we know that healing, liberation, or even resurrection are needed. It just isn't scripted. There are no guarantees. But Jesus is going. He is walking in the midst of car bombs and gang-controlled neighborhoods and custody battles filled with collateral damage. He's traveling back to walk among those old half-buried stones of grief and regret. He's not going back there simply to suffer as if that were a virtue in and of itself. He's traveling into harm's way to do what he's always done and to be what he's always been, the resurrection and the life. He's going back to open the graves that we're not even completely convinced we want opened, to bring forth the kind of justice and forgiveness and healing that we thought could never be possible. And he wants us, his disciples, to go with him. Let us go to Judea again, Jesus says, knowing full well the risks, not because he wants us to suffer, not because he wants us to die for a good cause, but because he wants us to be a part of what God is doing in this world. He wants us to be there when he comes to Bethany and says, "Take away the stone, unbind him, and let him go." In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.